Mhm, mhm. Hello, hello, hello. It's a beautiful Thursday, the 15th of January. It's hard to believe that we're 2 weeks into 26 already. And before you know it, it'll be 27. Amazing. I just came back from getting my hair done. Looks good, right? Because I'm going to Podfest, which I think I've shared a couple of times. And while I'm in the studio where I'm getting my hair done, there is a gal that does barber. She's only does men's hair, and that's not my stylist. And she's got a 4-month-old baby. And so I've been able to be in there for a few times now since the baby was born, and the baby hangs out in the salon, which is just really interesting. She does the hair with the baby strapped to her chest, and everybody in the entire salon helps support the baby. And at one point, my stylist came over to me while my hair was coloring, and she's holding the baby and playing with the little teething ring. And he got to a point where he was, if you've been around babies at all, they start to teeth, or they're sucking on something, but they're really wanting something more food wise. And so it was such an interesting experience to observe him just in that moment. There was nothing else going on. It was fully present, paying attention. And he was so clear at 4 months old. He would take the bottle in and then he would push it away. And then he would take it in and he would push it away. And I was so reminded of, I think I shared this last week sometime, this book by Oz Perlman, Read Your Mind. He's a mentalist. And one of the things that he talks about and being a mentalist is reading people. He's not reading anybody's mind, which he's very clear about stating to people. He's discovered through his lifetime and all the things that he's done, and he's practiced this craft of reading people, observing them, seeing when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're upset, when they're anxious. And it just really struck me as I'm watching this baby that what could be going on in the mind of a 4-month-old child, an infant that is not programmed, because we're all, I mean, once we get past the age of 8, it's pretty much it's pretty much locked in there. I share this all the time about when you from the age of 1 to 8, your mind is in the alpha state. It's open, it's receptive, it's getting all of its downloads. And then what we do is just repeat the patterns. And here's the thing, I'm noticing that the world is a little cranky these days. I'm just going to use that word because people are so much into their beliefs, whatever those are. I'm not here to talk about any specifics. The fact is that when you start to hunker down in your camp, right? You cannot see anything else. There's old Zen adages about you can't learn with a cup that's full. You have to empty your cup. All of these metaphors for being open. And so I think I've shared a couple of times my word for 2026 is curiosity. We can't understand anybody unless we're curious. And so from a business perspective, as all O's talks about in his book, he's talking about how to improve your business, because at the end of the day, if you're, especially if you're a self-employed person, you have to sell, you have to market yourself, and really understanding other people, listening to people is vital to all of that. And yet it's also vital to our lives in general. And for whatever reason, this download came to me actually yesterday, that two things can be true at the same time. And I think that's part of our issue with the not listening bit, is because once you decide that whatever your version, whatever your belief of the world is at any given moment, and you can't see another version of it, then nothing else could be true. So on the simplest level, two things can be true at the same time. For instance, I'm hungry and I don't want to eat because maybe you're on a eating program now. I'm tired and I don't want to exercise yet you do anyways. One thing about having two things be true at the same time is that we can really relate to it in our own experience if I say simple things like that. But what about if two things are true at the same time of somebody that you don't understand or don't agree with? Is it It's possible. It's actually the reality is they could have a different version of a circumstance or series of events than you do. And that does not mean either one of you is wrong or either one of you is right. It just is. And so beginning to be curious about somebody else's experience is really going to actually uncover for you a different version of the events or circumstances. So I'll use a different example. I spent a lot of time in 12-step rooms way, way, way many years ago. And people would come in that were alcoholics or addicts that had really ruined their family relationships because they weren't around. And they could still have this tremendous love for their children or their family, but they are in the throes of an addiction. And so two things could be true. They could love their family and they could be addicted and they could be experiencing life in a way that on the reverse side, their family sees them as not caring. The fact is that if we begin to unleash our ability to hold on to our way instead of the highway, we open ourselves to understand people in a different way. And as I said, this is good for our lives. This is good for our businesses. This is good for even if you're not an entrepreneur. This is a great way to go into a corporate environment. I actually interviewed a gal yesterday who went from being she's in her 30s, so she's still in her freshness of like everything's great in the world, which it is great in the world. I'm just saying she's got this optimism, and yet she went through this corporate structuring, going up the ladder, understanding that success is this model of, hustle, hustle, hustle. The farther you get ahead, the better life is going to be. And she came to a different realization when she got very high in her corporate structure and said, is this all there is? Because what she defines success now, as she described to me on my podcast, was my success is when I wake up in the morning and I'm so happy for what my life is. And that is a whole dynamic of success that isn't taught in a business school, that isn't taught in circles of money and finances, which I talk about money all the time. I'm an abundance teacher at my core. And yet, abundance is all of the things in our lives. It isn't just your bank account, it is that feeling of joyfulness, of being lit up by your life. When you come awake in the morning and you just think, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to be alive. What surprises are out there for me today in this beautiful place called planet Earth? And we are all here as these 3D beings. And I say this all the time, we are all one together. We are all one. And this whole siloing thing that we are doing right now, especially in the Western Hemisphere and in Europe, in the Western cultures, is claiming that we're right and somebody else is wrong. And that is not fundamentally the truth. We are only right in our own minds. And so, this whole idea of being curious, of really beginning to listen to people. And once again, I'm going to just point this out, this is a great book. It's a fun, I listen to it on audio because Oz uh, narrates it himself and he's quite hilarious. And, I don't agree with every single thing that's in there, but the way he frames it, I agree with that. And what he's talking about all through this book, not only is how you can change your perception of the world, but how do we connect with other people? Because I really feel this pain in my heart when I see the dissension that's going on everywhere. for a number of different reasons. And it really isn't relevant about which side or the other somebody's on. It's always about how am I more like somebody else than I'm different? And then we really begin to pay attention to our similarities. And we have these open dialogues that have nothing to do with world events and politics. And frankly, I don't like to talk about religion much other than spirituality. We can find these commonalities that we can see that two things can be true at the same time, and they're just versions of whatever that other person's perception is. And I find that so beautiful is when we become that curious, in that old saying that God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason, is really begin to listen to other people. Get curious without judgment about what someone else is thinking and believing. And it doesn't mean you have to rail against it. Even if you listen, you don't have to agree. You just get an opportunity to hear what is going on with them that has created that. And if you really dive deeply into an experience with somebody, you begin to realize that their whole life is not your whole life. And we all have come to where we are in this moment as a result of the experiences that we've had in our life. So maybe your experience was something that was really challenging or traumatic when you're young. And now you're coming up against somebody that didn't have that same experience, that really doesn't know what your experience was like. I interviewed another young lady yesterday who had some really severe um, domestic violence in her past. And she has taken that and now speaks, really interestingly, to university kids and to law enforcement, two different diametrically different groups, about what it's like from the inside of that experience. And what's so fascinating, as we chatted, they do, she does these talks, and sometimes they're 2 and 3 days long, because she's presenting information that neither one of these groups has ever heard in their lives. And so, if you think about your life, just your life, how much limitation have you put on yourself because you haven't become curious every single day of your life about what other people are thinking, why other people are believing what they believe? I know that there are all of these experiences that are happening in the world right now, that people have set up their camps, put up their flags, and said, this is my stake in the ground, and I'm not going to listen to you. And then we talk in sound bites. We talk in sound bites, which is even more hilarious, because you can, if I were to just talk to you in sound bites through these conversations, or any time that I ever talk to anybody, we would never get to know each other. We would never understand each other. We would never begin to explore what is it that makes us the same. So I'm inviting you to do that today as part of this series, which I said I'm going to have a live every day. And, that's one of those things that I decided to do. I think one of the things that's also so important is that we get out of our comfort zones if we're going to see that that two things can be true at once. And every experience that you're having right now, I gave you some little examples. I thought about bringing in some of the bigger examples of things that are going on in the world. And what I know, unfortunately, is if I were to bring up a specific topic, there would be all the people that want to jump on the bandwagon and say, "Oh my God, that's not right." And because, in social media, they do that. So I didn't want to give you a specific example of a big event that's going on, but I would like you to explore where you're digging your heels in over some version of the world, especially in current events, and say, what else could be true in this moment, in that situation? Because two things can be true at the same time. Two people can see something differently, and that doesn't mean one or the other of them is wrong. It just means that their experience has brought them to where they are, and that's their version. And I would love it if we all began to share that two things can be true at the same time and connect with each other. And that was a revolution on the planet. Because wouldn't that be beautiful if we all began to see that two, three, 12 things can be true at once? And it doesn't mean that any of them are wrong. So as I said, getting out of your comfort zone, that's one way to do it, is just begin to be curious and explore whatever versions of the world you're having right now. And as I said, I'm going to Podfest. I don't have any idea what I'm doing, which is most of the time, but that never stops me. That never stops me. I just keep moving forward and seeing what's next, because spirit, God, the universe, consciousness always has my back. And so I put one foot in front of me, and the next step is lit up so that I know exactly where I'm going. And two things are true at the same time. I am fearful because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm getting into. I don't know where I'm going, honestly. I mean, I have a location that I'm going to, and I'm also very excited. So I really want you to give this some real serious contemplation in yourself today. What two things can be true at the same time? And the only way you will know that, you can imagine, which I do all the time, but maybe ask somebody with curiosity and not with condemnation and not with judgment. So I'm going to leave that with you today. Get curious and just know that 2, 12, 25,000 things can be true at the same time. It just is your observation. Quantum physics says it. You are the observer. Whatever you observe, that's what you see. See you tomorrow.